Now, we're up to Yud Beis Amud Beis, except that we have one last piece on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. So let's tag on Yud Beis Amud Aleph as an extension of Yud Beis Amud Beis. And the Gemara asks the following stira between the Brisos. In the Brisa Rishona, if you remember, Hichzik Bekarka lo kon avodim. So Agav doesn't work. That you cannot be kon avodim with a kinyan Agav. Vatanya. But in the second Brisa, it says that if he sells karka avodim, Hichzik Bekarka kon avodim. So what do we do if we want to reconcile these two brisos? And the Gemara answers, Hasam, in the brisa Shnia, the second brisa that says that he was kona the avodim with karka, that's called omdim bisocha. It only applies as a valid kinyan if the eved is standing inside the karka. And then the eved could be konui agav karka, like any metalta. Michlal the high low kana. We can derive from this the conclusion that in the Brisa Rishona that says that hichzik bekarka lo kana avodim, it's kishe'ein omdu b'socha, and then we can reconcile the two Brisos. So again, whether or not you could be kona avodim agav karka depends upon whether they're omdim or not omdim. The Brisa Shnia is talking about a case of omdim, and therefore you could be kona the eved agav karka, whereas the Brisa Rishon is of the opinion that hichzik bekarka lo kona avodim, because the avodim are in this case not omdim bisocha. So the Gemara says the following: this makes sense according to that lashon, the lashon Lishna Basra. And now we come back. I told you to underline Rav Ika Bereder Rav Ami, who says that everybody agrees that Avdei Kemitaltal Dami Hainu Dei Omdu B'Tochayin V'i Lo. What did Rav Ika have in mind when he said that according to everyone Avona Metaltalin, and therefore you could be Kona Metaltalin Agav Karka? That's only an Omdu B'Socha when they are the Metaltalin are stationary inside the Karka. But if not, then there's no kinyan agav. But if we go back to the original first lashon of Rav Icha Breder Rav Aka Yoma, he said that everybody agrees that avdei kimitaltal idom. Is lomali omde besocha. Why is it necessary that the avodim stand inside the karka in order to be kona the avodim agav the karka? Amar Shmuel. Shmuel is of the opinion that you don't need omdim b'tocha karka, but rather machalo eser sodos v'eser bedinos kemen sheichzik b'achas mem kodes kulon. You don't need a separate kinyan for each one of his eser sodos that are located in different medinos throughout the globe. But rather, once there was a chazaka in one of them, then kodes kula. You don't need a kinyan for each one of them. So because he holds avodim kekarka in that lishna, the first lishna, is when he makes a kinyan on the karka, he was kona the avodim. And you don't need to add that stipulation of omdim v'socha. So the Gemara is going to answer this question with another question. Ulitaymech, according to you, Mr. Makshan, that avodim could be konui in an agav karka. Lamali omed besocha. Why do I need it? The eved be besocha. Hakaimalon the lo beinin tziburin. The Gemara Kiddushin Daf Chavav, and here we're turning to Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, drops the requirement of omdim b'tocha with regard to metaltal, and you want to be kona the metaltal agav karka. You don't even need siburin at all. They can be scattered throughout the entire globe. Again, I'm talking about the metalton obviously. Elo, so you have no choice. My is the chalav meimar shiny metalton denaidi metalton naidi. That if you have metaltalin which don't move from place to place, then you don't need siburin ala karka. But if the metaltalin moves, zazim mimakom lemakom, then you need siburin ala karka. So that when you kona that karka, you could be kona the metaltalin agav karka. Is hachinami. This is exactly the way we're going to say it, even according to the first lishna. That even though avodim have the status of a karka, they're not niknim in a karka if they're not inside the karka. And basically what's happening is you can make a kinyan on multiple karkos by being kona one particular karka. Shiny mikarkoi denaidi, mikarkoi de lo naidi. Avdo mikarkoi denaidi who? What hosam sadna the arachadu. The Eved, as we said before, is karka, but he's holech mimakom lamakom. He's not connected to the karka, and therefore, if he's not omed in the karka, the kinyan of the karka is not operative and valid to be kona the Eved. So these are the outer limited boundaries, limitational boundaries of a kinyan aga. However, in the case where he sold 10 sados in 10 different provinces all over the globe, is sadna the arachadhu. The land itself, the guf haaretz, is chad, is echad. So all the karkos are connected to make it integrated to make it one guf. And therefore, if you do a kinyan on one of the various fields, etc., you could be kona all of them. The Mishnah on Daf Tesamid Beis establishes that the Chi of Tashlum in Zakin is Kshahus Ku Nechasim She'ein Bohem Me'ilah. That what kind of Nechasim were damaged for which you have recourse to collect compensation? That's only Ein Bohem Me'ilah. So, for example, if you're Mazik Kodshim, you'd be potter from the Zikin. From whence do we derive this? From a pasuk in Mishpat V'Kiyigov Shar Isha Sharei Eyu in the Gemara Darshins Hadaf Lamed Zayin Sharei Eyu V'Lo Shar Shal Hegdish. So now the Gemara is Medai. It seems from the language of the Mishnah that in order to be Yischayev Tashlum in Ezikin, the Torah was makbid that the nechasim that were damaged Me'ilah Hu de Lesbe Ha Mikdash Ekodshim. The only requirement for his chayvus of tashlumi nezek is shalota heba me'ilah. Because if it's yesh ba me'ilah, then it's not considered shoreyehu, and therefore the mazik is potter. Hamigdash kodshi. If, let's say, there's no me'ilah, then the mazik should be chayev, even though it's mikdash kachi, even though it has kedusha to it. Mantana, who is the Tana of Mishnah who holds that if you're mazik nichsei hegdesh she'ein b'hem me'ilah yachayev, Omar Reb Yochanan v'kodshim kalma leave the Reb Yossi Aglili the Omram Bailam. So now we're going to invoke the Shita of Rabbi Yossi Aglili in Masechet Me'ilah Daf Zayin Amid Beis with regard to a behema shlomim. And there's no Me'ilah. Why is it so? Says Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Is Moment Bailam. Kodshe Kalim, which means Shlomim, is Moment Bailam. And therefore, if the animal of Kodshim Kalim was damaged, again, there was no Shechita at this point, then the shor is considered shorei. Montana. So who's the Tana of our Mishnah who holds that if you're mazik nichsei hegdesh, if ein b'hem me'ila, then you're chayav? Rabbi Yochanan b'kodshim kalim al liba to Rabbi Yossi Aglili the Omer moment bailamu. So a behemas shlomim, we'll see if it's before shkita, after shkita, doesn't have me'ila, and that's the sugya me'ila dav zayin and beis. And Rabbi Yossi Aglili is of the opinion that kodshim kalim al moment bailim, and therefore it's considered shorei ehu. And if before the shchita, the animal of kodshim kalim of shlomim was uzka, then the mazik has to pay to the bailim, because Rabbi Yosef Glil's mom and bailim him, and it's considered shorei. To Sanya, where do we find the sheet of Rabbi Yosef Glil in a brayso with regard to kofar pikodom v'nish balashek and he's chayav keren v'chomesh, and he has to bring a korban osham in Vayikra Hey. It says nefesh ki sechta umola mal b'Hashem v'kichesh b'amito. Let's underline the word v'kichesh, even though it doesn't appear in our printed Gemara. And nishbal sheket. So from the word v'kichesh, we derive that the word v'kichesh goes li'el on mashal afonel and milara mashal achreh. So it's if it says v'kichesh ba v'kichesh. V'kichesh ba miso v'kichesh. So in other words, he was kichesh gam b'Hashem and gam b'mito. What's the chiddush here? L'rabos, the case of a shomer who was kofar pikodon of kodshim kalim, where there's a chiv chomesh and osham. Shehein mamono, it's considered the moment of the mafkid, and therefore there's akosha b'Hashem and also akosha b'miso. Divrei Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Yochanan, as we saw earlier, is machadesh that even with regard to other things, not only in the case of chomesh the osham does Rabbi Yossi Aglili maintain that kodshim kalim is moment bailim, but even with regard to mazikim, it's one and the same underlying principle. So the Gemara now raises an objection to Rabbi Yochanan from the Mishnah in Kiddushin and Beis Amid Beis, but Tnan Kohen O Yisrael Hamakadesh Bechelko, right? He's going to get, if he's in the Mishmeres, he's going to get a chelik in the carbon, and he wants to be Makadesh an Isha with that chelik. Or in the case of Kodshim Kalim, it's Lav Dafka Kohen. Even Yisrael has a chelik in the Bailim in the Kodshim Kalim. It's Bein B'Kodshim Kodshim, Bein B'Kodshim Kalim, Eina Mekudeshes. Lema Delok Rabbi Yossi Aglili. If we're extrapolating, according to Rabbi Yochanan's understanding of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, from the case of Makish, B'Pikon, V'Nishba, etc., that Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds that Kodshim Kalim is considered Maram Bailim, then how could it be that this Mishnah says that Bein B'Kodshim Kalim Eina Mekudeshes? Why Eina Mekudeshes if he has Bailus? It must be against Rabbi Yossi Aglili. The Gemara says, no, Afilu Teim Rabbi Yossi Aglili, you could square off the Mishnah in Kedusha with Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Ki Omer Rabbi Yossi Aglili Mechayim. If there was not yet Shechita, the behemoth is still alive and well, then Kodshim Kalim is considered moment bailam. Avali achar shchita, after you shechta for the purpose of a carbon, is afilu Rabbi Yosef Glili modeh dechi kazachu mishal gavoa kazachu. When the Kohen or the Baal Karba gets his portion in Achilas Abasar in Kodshim Kalim, that is Mishulchan Gavoa, which means they are allowed to eat their specific and respective segments or parts of the Korban of Hashem, But that's not considered Mamona Shel Kohen or Mamona Shel Bala Korban. So for sure you can't be Mekadosh an Isha with that Chilek. Our Mishnah is talking about a case where a Behemas Chulin was Mazik Kodshim Kala before Shchita. And at that period of time, according to Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, it's Mom and Bailan, and therefore the Mazik is chayiv to pay. Of course, then according to this opinion, in Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, he could be Mekadosh and Isha. So Gemara now continues to attack Rabbi Yochanan with regard to extrapolating from Rabbi Yossi HaGlili to Shar Dini HaTorah. And that Rabbi Yossi HaGlili would hold a Kodshim Kalav as long as it's before Shechita and the animal's alive, it's considered Mom and Bailan. Frek the Gemara Mechaymi Omar. Is it really true that Rabbi Yossi HaGlili maintains that Kodshim Kalav is Mom and Bailan, even with regard to other Dinim HaTorah above and beyond Shvuas HaPikadon? Vasnan, we have a Mishnah Ma'aser Sheni Perek Aleph, Bechar of a Behemoth Tahura, it's Kodshim Kalav, it's Mom and Kohanim, Mochron also. The Kohanim are able to sell it. Obviously, you're going to have to sell it to another Kohen. Tam, if it has no mum. Chai, if it's before Shechita. So what's the Lokech going to gain here if it's Lilo mum? He's going to wait until Ad Sheyipol Bo mum, and then he'll eat it. If it was already shechted as a tam, then as a din of kodshim shenishchatu b'chutz, it's also about no. The Mishnah now gives us another din. Ubal mum chai v'shach. A b'char bal mum, the kohanim could sell it whether or not it's alive, the animal, or it's already been shechted. Why? Because once there was an afilas mum, the Kedusha is Paka, and you're allowed to shech. Now the Mishnah gives us another din. And by introduction to this last din, let's point out that you're Makadesh an Isha with Kodshim Kalim before the Shechita. Mekadshim Bo'asa Isha. The Omer of Nachman, Omer Rabba Barafua, Lo Shor. Where do we say that Bechor Tam, which is still alive, is Mom and Kohen, and he can be Mekadosh and Isha? Ella Bechor Bisman Hazeh. There's no Beis Hamikdash. The came and the Lachazi La Krova. It's not Roy Fakrova. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Is Islu La Kohanim Schia B'Gavayu. The Kohanim have a Schia. It's Mamona. But Bisman Shebeis Hamikdash Kayam the Chazi La Krova. Lo, the Bechar is not considered the moment shall Kohen. He cannot be Mekadosh and Isha. In any event, we see clearly that Kodshim Kalim, if they're alive and they're Omed La Krova, it's not considered Mamona Shel Kohen. And that's against Rabbi Yochanan, who says that even Ba'odam Chaim, even though they're still alive, they're considered Kim Mamona Bailim for all Dinei Torah. And now the Gemara wants to prove that Rav Nachman, who made this distinction within the framework of Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, is Esvei. We can ask Rav, we can ask Akasha Rav Nachman. Umol Amal Bashel Ravos Kodshim Kalim Shem Amona Divrei Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. That since the next part of the parasha says Hashamu Yovil Hashem, he's got to bring a korban Hashem. It must be in a case where the Beis Hamikdash is still alive and well. Otherwise, what are we talking about bringing a korban? So we see that even at the time that we were makar of korbanos, still, nevertheless, Rabbi Yossi HaGlili holds that the nechshavim kimamon abaylan, which is against Rav Nachman. So from this kasha, we can see clearly that Rav understood that according to Rav Nachman in the Mishnah, in the Shita of Rabbi Yosef Aglili, because otherwise there would be no room for his kasha from Rabbi Yosef Aglili. And now Rav Nachman says that according to the Shita of Rabbi Yosef Aglili, Bachar Bisman Shabbos HaMikdash Kaim is not considered moment violent. He cannot be Mekadosh and Isha. Against Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that according to Rabbi Yosef Aglili, Kachim Kalim is moment violent for all dinim of the Torah. Now the Gemara wants to prove that Ravina likewise doesn't accept Rabbi Yochanan. Umeshani Ravina. Ravina gives an answer to Rava's Kash on Rav Nachman that Rabbi Yosef Aglili and Kachim Kalim, it's considered moment violent. That was only in Bechar Bechutz Laretz. And even if the Beis Hamikdash is Kayom, but now we're in a Bechar situation in Chutz Laretz, Val leave the Rav Shimon di Omar, this Rav Shimon di Tmura Daf Chaf Aleph, with regard to Bechoros Shel Chutz Laretz, in Bo, if they come to Eretz Yisrael Tmimim, so it's like a korban tav, is he karbu, bring it on him his bear. So what does the Gemara want to be medayik here from Rab Shimon? This is only in Bo b'di'evet. And we send it to Chutz Laretz V'akrova. But Bechar or other Kachim Kalim in Eretz Yisrael, at the time the Beis Hamikdash is standing, that's not considered moment violent. Can't be Mekadosh and Isha, like Reb Nachman said. So now the Gemara concludes its proof from Ravina. Vim Isa, if it's true, the Chi Amar Rabbi Yosef Aglili, when Rabbi Yosef Aglili maintains that Kachim Kalim is moment who Mechayim, and that's only as far as Shvuas HaPikon is concerned. It's not only, I should say, as far as Shvuas HaPikon is concerned, but it applies to Kol Dinei HaTorah. And therefore, Memele the Chachamim who disagree, Rabbi Yosef Aglili will hold that Kachim Kalim is moment Gavoa, even while the animal is still alive. And that's exactly the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan. If that be the case, why does Ravina say that Rabbi Yosef Aglili is talking about Bechar in Chutz Laretz in order to clarify the dinim of Rav Nachman, who says the Efshel L'Kadosh Isha V'Kachim Kalim, is Lishnei, here on the top of Yud Gimel, Ravina could be Metarix, the Bryce that holds a Kachim Kalim is Mamono, even at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, is Rabbi Yosef Aglili, and Rav Nachman, who explains the Mishnah that you cannot generate a valid Maisa Kedushin with a Bechar Bizman HaMikdash, that reflects the Shita of Rabban. And they hold Kachim Kalim, if they're Roy Lakrava, they always have the status of Mama Gavon. Okay then? So we'll stop here on the top of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Al.